Okay, so the world's going to end. Right? No, it's not. Okay, the planet will be fine. Life on it is going to have some difficulties in the not too distant future. It's difficult for life as it is now. Now the thing is, why do I say this? What makes me think that this is a possibility? So we've come out with the IPCC just recently gave us a report based on some tipping points. Now, so let's take a look at the Arctic to start with. We're going to start at the top. So there's there are two tipping points that IPCC has pointed out there. The one is the extent of sea ice, and the other is thawing of the permafrost. So sea ice extent fluctuates yearly, but the trend is down. It's a marked downward trend. So now, if you want to know more about this, Dr. Peter Wadhams is the guy to go to. He's a renowned British scientist who's spent 40 odd years of his life up in the Arctic every summer. It wasn't year round all the time, but I understand he stayed year round, or possibly did, but he's an expert. Now he's had his reputation blackened somewhat because they asked him to predict when you'd have an ice-free Arctic, and he got that prediction wrong. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get an ice-free Arctic. It's just that it's a very sophisticated, very complex system, and predictions are bound to be incorrect. But over time, read his book, Farewell to Ice. Dr. Peter Wadhams, it's easy read, and he's very knowledgeable on the topic. So at the moment you've got very what's called young ice in the sea ice up in the Arctic. Now, because the ice is in the sea, it's not going to affect sea level rise. It's already in the sea. So as it fluctuates, nothing to do with sea level rise. But it does affect, of course, systems around it. And one of those systems, the coastal erosion is an issue that's the sea ice diminishing affects coastal erosion. Temperature regulation, the sea expands as it gets warmer. So there is a little bit of sea level rise, but it's not due to ice melting, it's due to the thermal expansion of that part of the ocean. Of course, those temperature issues that are associated with the sea ice coverage affect the temperature on the land, and there's various reports will tell you that the Arctic is warming 4 to 6 times faster than the global average. So 4 degrees Celsius on average, as opposed to 1.2, which is the global. So the permafrost thawing. Okay, so here's another nexus with our elites. I don't want to call them the elites, the top strata. Okay, the WEF and other similar organisations, global organisations, catering to a top strata. So the Dutch farmers have been protesting this, and what's happening is the government is, or the EU is saying to the farmers that they've got to get their herds of cattle down because of the methane issue, methane in the atmosphere issue, and also there's the nitrous oxide and runoff from farms, etc. That to do with fertiliser. So they're going to have to restrict their fertiliser use, and then of course the farmers are not happy over this, and they're protesting. German farmers likewise haven't heard anything about the other European countries regarding this aspect of things. It's out of the mainstream again. Mainstream's hardly covered any of this. But we're talking Dutch farmers, one of the top most productive farmers in the world, and their production is being cut by the bureaucracy. So the bureaucracy is being told this has got to be done. They're going ahead with that, and the farmers are not happy. So you've got food shortages already. You've got farmers losing their land, basically, and losing their productivity, their herds. It takes ages to build up a herd of cattle. It's all been well, not wiped out, but it's bureaucrats have stepped in and put caps on this sort of thing for climate change. Okay, now the zero emissions thing, right? In the Arctic, the permafrost is thawing, and microbes get in to the vegetable matter that comes out of the ice and the soil. Okay, the microbial life kicks off, if you like, and that produces methane, and as things decompose, methane, and also carbon dioxide. Methane breaks down, I think, into carbon dioxide and water vapour. Water vapour is another greenhouse gas. So methane, it's first of all a more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, and it's also as it breaks down quicker than CO2 does, or it releases its photon quicker than CO2 does. So it's not as bad long term. It has a short duration of effect regarding the climate, but it, like I say, more potent in the short term. So you've got cows farting in Europe and North America and Australia, and regulations being put on cow farting and belching, okay, burping and farting cows all over the world. And up in the Arctic, you've got hundreds of square kilometres, or potentially thousands of square kilometres of permafrost thawing and releasing more methane than all the cows all over the planet. It's just like the cows' bodily functions, and pigs as well, I believe, that pale into insignificance when you take into account the thawing permafrost. Now, this is a process that's ongoing. You don't just a bureaucrat can't just turn the thermostat down up in the Arctic. All right, this is something that it's self reinforcing. So positive feedback loop. The more permafrost that melts, the more methane is produced. The more methane is released to the atmosphere. The warmer it gets. The warmer it gets, the more permafrost melts. The more methane is released into the atmosphere, and has this ongoing thing. Now you'll hear them talk about infrastructure getting destroyed. So what? It's forget. Yes, a few roads and railways going like this. it's the CO2 and methane that's the issue, not a few buckled up railroad lines, you know. So what that does in the Arctic, of course, warms the Arctic faster, and we can see that happening in the record. Now, as the permafrost melts, warms the place up, the Greenland ice sheet melts faster. Okay, another tipping point. Okay, now here's the thing: there's a hell of a lot of ice on Greenland, so much so that it has depressed the tectonic plate that it's sitting on. And as it melts, of course, that releases some of the pressure on the tectonic plate, and that is going to affect the tectonic plates around it. So it's this geological aspect to this whole thing. And what you should see, in fact you do see, is more volcanic activity around the plate boundaries, earthquakes, etc. This is part of the natural cycle. So volcanoes typically will eject CO2 into the atmosphere. It is what it is, you know, a few sulfates and whatnot, no doubt. There's particulate matter that'll get up into the stratosphere. Oops. Okay, got interrupted there. Real life, you know. So your warming Arctic there melts this Greenland ice sheet to some extent, releases some pressure on the tectonic plate that it's sitting on, and that affects the tectonic plates around it, producing volcanic activity, seismic activity, and we see that as well. So this is an example of this, of it being a sophisticated and complex series of systems that affect each other in various ways, and have side effects around the world with the seismic activity. Okay, so there's three tipping points there: the sea ice extent, the permafrost thaw, and Greenland ice sheet. Now the Greenland ice sheet is so much ice there that it's going to take centuries, if not millennia, to melt completely. Okay, and there is some evidence that the freshwater enters into that off the coast of the southern coast of Greenland there, and changes the salinity of the ocean in that region, temperature as well, but salinity is more important. And this slows the what they call the AMOC, or the conveyor belt, or the overturning meridional thermocline. It's an ocean current, basically. The Gulf Stream, it's known as colloquially, goes up past the coast of Newfoundland there, and is affected by salinity of the ocean in Greenland, off the southern coast of Greenland. And in the record, core. Okay, so step back, just go back in time a little bit. The undersea cables were getting laid off the Atlantic coast of Africa, and there were drill cores taken. Now, let me just pause here for a second. So, yeah, the AMOC runs up the coast of Newfoundland there, up to Greenland, and the salinity changes in that water due to a melting ice cap. Now this has happened in the past, you see. Greenland has had a melt in the past, melted too, you know. Changes the salinity of the water, the AMOC then switches and it crosses the Atlantic at a much lower latitude and ends up off the coast of Spain and Morocco. And this affects the Sahara Desert. It causes the desert to have a much more damp climate. So there's a lot more ocean moisture moves on to the Sahara Desert, greens the desert and turns into savanna. And we've got fossil record of that happening. Hippopotamus and giraffe living in the Sahara because there's abundant life there, water and whatnot. And we know this has been a paleoclimate. Plenty of research done on that, you can Google it. And it's due to this AMOC switching. And we know the AMOC switched because like I say, they took these drill cores and they had these little rocks in the drill cores just randomly spread across the seabed. And the rocks can be traced due to their chemical composition to North America. And of course you've got the mid-Atlantic ridge where two tectonic plates are moving apart, which means that your rocks on one side can't be the same as the rocks on the other because there's all this movement, you see, across the ridge. It grows, the Atlantic Ocean is spreading, and so the rocks. The only way the rocks can have got there is by transportation. Now, what could possibly transport rocks across the Atlantic Ocean in the past? And it turns out it's icebergs. So icebergs start off on land, of course, as part of a glacier, and this is all proven science. Okay? When you have a glacier carves off into an iceberg, the iceberg floats out into the sea, slowly melts as it makes its way due to currents, sea currents, or ocean currents, and as it melts, the little rocks fall off the bottom of the iceberg and they leave a track across the Atlantic. Now, due to the ocean temperatures, we know that how long it takes the icebergs to melt, and we can predict where the little rock trails are going to end. And we drill down, find the rock cores, and there you are. Prove the science. I mean, you could put radar trackers on your friggin' icebergs and you go right into it, but it's pretty obvious what's happening. You don't get useless rocks getting carted out by whales or something, So anyway, AMOC slips, causes the northern hemisphere to freeze, ice age, right? And your bigger icebergs to begin with, because there's a lot more ice up there, and then they are travelling across an ocean that's cooled by this ice age ice up in the northern hemisphere. And so this is why the Greenland ice sheet, even though it's melting at unprecedented rates at the moment, it's more than likely not going to melt completely away. You see, it'll affect that. The AMOC. The AMOC will switch. Northern Europe under huge ice sheets eventually as it comes down, as they come out of the Arctic, as they have done before. We see it in the landscape. Most of Northern Europe and Russia flat because the glaciers and the ice sheets have just taken the top off as they grind across the rock, they flatten everything out. Well-known geological processes. And this is the AMOC flipped before, it's going to flip again. And that's the tipping point. Now, my point is, as I'm making this video, and as you're watching it, the permafrost is thawing and the microbes are getting in and then producing the methane. Methane is being released to the atmosphere. That's causing the atmosphere to warm. The atmosphere is warming atmosphere makes the permafrost thaw, more microbes, more methane, more warm, more thaw, more microbes, more, it's this positive feedback loop. That is also affected by the sea ice extent and the change in climate that brings, along with associated coastal degradation, etc. There's another aspect to this, and it's a Siberian ice shelf. It's a shallow sea up off the coast of Siberia, and it's got methane hydrates, which is just solid methane basically with water in it, sitting on the ocean, on the shelf. Now the shelf depth of the ocean is 50 meters to 350 meters across most of its width and for most of its length. Scientists, Peter Wadham has some colleagues, Russian colleagues, that have videoed these hydrates melting and lifting off the shelf as little white crystals floating in the water, and bubbles coming off them, bubbles of methane. Real life again, hang on. Okay, this is so this video is starting to turn into a marathon. So I'll just try and draw some threads together here. So there's this idea that there's these tipping points beyond which the climate system in question will go beyond human control. I don't understand the thinking behind that, because humans are not controlling the climate. We never have controlled the climate, and we're not going to control the climate anytime soon. So there's this idea that if you keep the warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, global average, you're going to either stop the climate reaching these tipping points, or you're going to mitigate the damage from the climate hitting some of these tipping points and not others. Again, it's a nice thought, but there's no way that this makes any real sense in relation to the climate. That's the only way I can put that. My point being, the permafrost in the Arctic is melting. It's already melting. It's documented. We've seen it. There's numerous tests being done on this. It is melting. Or thawing is the correct nomenclature. The permafrost is thawing now. How do you stop it from thawing? The only way to stop it from thawing is refreezing it. Is that going to get done anytime soon? There's a question for you. I don't think so. And the thing is, to do anything about it is going to require a global consensus, and we're far from ever being able to attain a global consensus on anything at the moment. So the permafrost is going to continue to thaw, it's going to continue to warm, it's going to continue to melt that Greenland ice cap, and it's going to continue to slow the AMOC down. And the ice extent is not going to get any better anytime soon. Will those three tipping points, potentially the fourth one being the AMOC, they're in the bag. If they haven't already tipped, they're going to tip. Right, the Arctic, what are you going to do to stop the Arctic from thawing? They're not going to do anything. Nothing can be done to stop it from thawing. And even if by the slimmest of chances something does get done, the lag time, there's first of all the lag time towards getting it done, and everything continuing to accelerate in the meantime. And then there's the lag time from getting it done to when the desired effect can take result, because it's not going to happen overnight, is it? Okay, so you've got maybe 2 generations of human beings there where you've got the lag up and the lag down. Who knows? Who knows? Nobody knows. What we do know is that Arctic is thawing out and it's producing methane on global scales, and regulating food production for humans when there's already a food crisis. And this is planned by a tier, not the global warming killing the food production. So that's reality as far as I can see, you know. And I'm going to leave it at that. But look, I'm going to keep producing these videos. Eventually, the crap that's in my head's going to reach up with what's currently happening and globally regarding these topics, and I'll be able to actually dissect real-time stuff. But you've got to get this context down first before everything in the internet gets shut down and we're told not to get this information out. Because it's not that it's hopeless, right? But like, what can get done regarding this? There's this idea that your free market capitalism can lift people out of poverty, and there's no doubt that does actually work. That's the best tool we have for alleviating poverty. And if the world could just become numerous little free market economies for each country in a democratic system, we can lift people out of poverty. Once they get out of poverty, they become more conscious of the world around them, their environmental issues, and there'll be pressure on governments to actually do something about this. Now, it's a good idea, like, sure. How long? What's your time frame? Because the permafrost continues to melt, continuing to warm the Arctic at accelerating rates, continuing to destabilise the northern hemisphere. So is it going to be a grassroots movement? How are you going to organise that when they're suppressing all your free speech? Implementing these, getting rid of physical currency and having digital currency so that can be controlled centrally. Buying all your food, disrupting the communities or dividing the communities along racial lines, gender lines, fragmenting everything so that you're all arguing amongst yourselves. In the meantime, the top tier positioning themselves to be able to outlast most of humanity, I'd imagine. I would imagine that's what they're doing. Again, this sounds like conspiracy, but apparently this is, I've got to look more into this. There's apparently what they're calling a tri-state city planned for the Netherlands and Belgium. A big mega city. When are they going to start building that? You know, like before the ice melts, or you know, when do they think they're going to build a tri-state megacity in Belgium and the Netherlands? So anyway, there's like I say, if you can support the channel in any way, just share the video, comment, like it. If you can donate, donations are welcome, and hopefully we can keep the or at least kick something off with this. You know, we'll see what happens.